Tonight, as you settle into the soft cradle of your bed, you enter a different kind of dream. Not the noisy kind, but the quiet corridors where the world's real decisions unfold. Here begins a journey through 5 families, 5 silent dynasties, whose footsteps have shaped markets, nations, and the flow of global power without ever needing to raise their voices. In the calm ahead, you'll drift through stories of humble beginnings, small shops, quiet towns, simple visions that grew into vast empires. You'll see how these families built influence not through noise, but through discipline, long-term thinking, unity, and an intimate understanding of human behavior. This journey won't overwhelm you, it will soothe you. Because here power becomes a quiet river, money becomes structure, and influence becomes presence. By the time the path ends, you won't just know these families. You will feel the architecture of power and recognize how calm, focused minds shape the world more deeply than chaos ever could. So breathe slowly, sink in, and step into a landscape where dynasties dream, and their dreams quietly guide the world. Your journey into gentle power and silent influence begins now. The Walton family in the soft hush of the American heartland, where wide fields meet gentle skies. A young Sam Walton once wandered with simple dreams tucked into his pocket, never imagining how far those dreams would ripple. He began as a boy who noticed things. How people shopped, what made them stay loyal, and how a fair price could make a family's life a little easier. And as he grew, that quiet awareness stayed with him like a compass. By the time he opened his first modest store in Newport, Arkansas in 1945, that compass guided him. But the journey from observing to doing wasn't instant. He spent years studying competitors, running experiments in small corners of retail, and learning from every success and mistake. And so, when the doors of that first store finally opened, it wasn't a sudden event. It was a natural unfolding of everything he had been preparing for. Those years of noticing what people needed slowly crystallized into one belief. If you save people money, you earn their trust. That belief became the heartbeat of everything that followed. As that little store began to thrive, Sam carried the lessons forward into 1962, when he opened the first Walmart in Rogers, Arkansas. It was a risky move. Competition was fierce, margins were thin, and the idea of making money by reducing prices went against typical business wisdom. But Sam saw something others did not: the power of scale and discipline. Instead of fearing low prices, he embraced them as a tool of influence. And as Walmart grew, this philosophy quietly rewired the American economy. Manufacturers began adjusting their entire production lines to meet Walmart's demands. Shipping routes shifted, pricing norms changed. Whole towns rebuilt their rhythms around Walmart's arrival or absence. The Walton family wasn't just building stores, they were shaping the invisible architecture of global commerce. Through the 1970s and 80s, as the world grew noisier, the Waltons grew stronger. Sam's children, Rob, Jim, Alice, and later his grandson Stuart, stepped quietly into roles that carried enormous weight. Together they refined what Sam had started, a discipline around cost efficiency so strict and unwavering that it became almost mythic. They didn't need to speak loudly, their decisions spoke for them. A single shift in Walmart's purchasing strategy could sway entire industries. A request to lower packaging costs might send manufacturers back to redesigning factories. A new demand for sustainable sourcing could reshape agricultural practices worldwide. Yet with great influence came moments of shadow, moments that revealed just how much power they held. Over the years, Walmart faced controversies about labor practices, wage levels, aggressive supplier negotiations, and pressures placed on small local businesses. These weren't loud scandals in the traditional sense, they were systemic waves that showed how deeply Walmart's reach extended. Critics argued that the company's relentless pursuit of low prices sometimes strained workers or destroyed local competition. Supporters countered that Walmart lifted millions by making essentials more affordable. And in that tension, the Walton influence became unmistakable. Their decisions could lift, shape, disrupt, or transform entire communities with quiet ease. Still behind all this, the Waltons themselves remained consistent, private, disciplined, structured. Their mindset, the one we're trying to understand, was built on a few unwavering pillars: simplicity, frugality, consistency, and the belief that serving the customer was a kind of sacred responsibility. Even as their wealth grew into the hundreds of billions, they stayed out of the spotlight, letting Walmart's quiet machinery speak for them. Their control wasn't theatrical, it was infrastructural. It was in the shipments that moved across oceans, the contracts that shaped global manufacturing, the pricing that determined what a family could or couldn't afford. And it was in the way nearly 2 million employees, one of the largest workforces on earth, ordered their lives around the rhythm of Walmart's demands. As the decades passed, the Walton legacy became less about a person and more about an ecosystem, a network of stores, suppliers, warehouses, data systems, and global supply chains all moving in harmony. And gently woven through it was the same mindset Sam carried as a young boy. Notice what people need, serve them efficiently, and guard every penny as though it matters. That simple philosophy, when magnified across the world, created an empire that touches more households each day than any government or institution ever has. Now, as this chapter softly closes, another begins to unfold. Let's move to the Mars family, a dynasty even quieter, almost invisible to the world, yet woven into its sweetness and its tenderness. A story of chocolate, of comfort, of pet care reaching into countless homes. A different kind of power, one built not on shelves but on desires, routines, and the quiet companionship of animals people love. And if these stories of silent influence, hidden empires, and the gentle architecture of global power speak to you, make sure you subscribe. Because ahead lie more worlds, more families, more quiet dynasties whose dreams and decisions shape the one we live in. The Mars family, in the gentle quiet of early 1900s America, long before the world knew the taste of a Mars bar or the comfort of a pet hospital carrying their unseen signature, a young man named Frank C. Mars sat at a simple kitchen table in Tacoma, Washington, teaching himself the delicate art of candy making. The world he lived in was small then, filled with simple tools, a few ingredients, and a sense of patient hope. He had failed in business more than once, yet instead of giving up, he kept stirring sugar, experimenting with textures, learning from every setback. Those quiet early years shaped the Mars mindset more than anything. Keep trying, quietly, persistently, without announcing anything to the world. By 1911, in Minneapolis, Frank finally opened a tiny candy business called the Mars Candy Factory. built almost entirely on perseverance, and that little spark, born from failure, repetition, and a quiet curiosity, would eventually become one of the largest private companies on earth. But at the time, it was only a single step, seamlessly connected to all the moments when Frank had refused to quit. As production grew, Frank's son, Forrest Mars Sr., who had spent his childhood watching his father struggle and innovate, carried something else within him, an uncompromising discipline. When he joined the business in the late 1920s, the father's gentle creativity met the son's sharp ambition, and the combination shifted the entire destiny of the company. Forrest didn't just want to make candy, he wanted to build systems, create processes, and design a company where consistency was sacred. And so in 1930, when he created the Milky Way bar, it wasn't just a confection, it was the first sign of a mindset that blended invention with scale. But growth never happens without friction. Father and son disagreed often, their visions clashing quietly behind closed doors, until Forrest eventually left the US to build his own branch of the business in Europe. It was a significant decision, one that shaped the family's story. His time abroad led him to develop Arnhems in 1941, Der Kreis, inspired by soldiers who needed chocolate that wouldn't melt in their hands. And when this product reached the US Army during World War II, it transformed Mars from a candy maker into a might supplier, woven into global wartime logistics. That was a moment when their influence began to spread silently across oceans, through distribution networks, through supply chains that would later become the backbone of Mars Incorporated. When Frank passed away in 1934, Forrest returned with a hardened vision and took control of the company. It was under his leadership that Mars became a true empire, not just in chocolate, but in Petcare, food science, supply chain mastery, and global distribution. Forrest's philosophy was simple yet absolute. The consumer is our boss. And he built an organization so disciplined that even tiny inefficiencies were treated as distractions from a sacred mission. Employees remembered him as intense, demanding, and exacting, but his strictness was also the force that pushed Mars into the future. As decades flowed softly into one another, Forrest's 3 children, Forrest Jr., John, and Jacqueline Mars, inherited not only the wealth, but the secretive DNA of the company. They expanded Mars Inc. into a realm far larger than confectionery. Under their guidance, Mars stepped quietly into Petcare, acquiring Pedigree, Whiskers, Royal Canin, and eventually the massive veterinary hospital networks VCA and Banfield, turning the family into the unseen guardians of millions of pets. Their decisions influence not only what pets eat, but how they receive medical treatment, how clinics are run, and how data on animal health is collected worldwide. With one acquisition, entire veterinary industries shifted their standards, yet power always casts shadows, even when used quietly. Over the years, Mars Incorporated faced controversies, accusations of aggressive supplier negotiations, concerns about sustainability, debates over sugar content, questions about its opaque governance. And in chocolate production, the company was drawn into criticism surrounding cocoa supply chains, where labor issues and sourcing practices sparked global conversation. These were not traditional scandals with dramatic headlines, but complex systemic issues that revealed the reach of Mars' influence. When they changed a policy, thousands of farmers felt it. When they delayed one, entire regions waited. Still, the Mars family remained almost invisible. No interviews, no public speeches, no grand opinions. Their silence became their signature power. While other billionaires built brands around themselves, the Mars heirs maintained a near mythic distance from the world. And from behind this curtain, their decisions shaped the daily habits of billions. What children snack on after school, what pets eat for dinner, what products fill supermarket shelves, what prices ripple through supply chains. Their empire, built on chocolate and Petcare, became a quiet force that influenced agriculture, manufacturing, veterinary medicine, global logistics, and food science. And yet the family's internal mindset stayed rooted in the habits Frank and Forrest carried from those early days. Privacy, discipline, product consistency, and an almost spiritual belief in controlling every link of the value chain. This is what made Mars Inc. not merely large, but powerful. Its ability to shape industries without revealing itself, to influence prices without public negotiation, to steer the market from behind a gently closed door. A family that shaped the world not through noise, but through structure, not through fame, but through systems, not through public presence, but through private discipline. Their empire stretches across fields of cocoa, across shelves of global markets, across hospitals where pets recover quietly, across homes where their products bring comfort without anyone realizing who stands behind them. Now, as the sweetness of the Mars legacy fades into the background, another chapter rises from the industrial horizon. Let's move to the Koch family, an empire far less visible, yet pulsing through the core of modern industry. A dynasty of energy, chemicals, agriculture, and logistics, shaping not just homes but the infrastructure that carries nations. Where Mars offered comfort, the Kochs build foundations, pipelines, materials, and freight routes, the quiet framework that keeps economies moving. And if these hidden currents of power intrigue you, don't forget to subscribe, because ahead lie more families whose decisions ripple through energy, finance, and the silent machinery of the world. The Koch family. In the quiet stillness of early 20th century America, long before the world felt their reach through pipelines, chemicals, shipping routes, and industrial materials, a brilliant engineer named Fred Koch stood at the edge of possibility. He wasn't born into power, he built his understanding slowly, like a craftsman shaping steel. As a young man in the 1920s, freshly trained in chemical engineering, Fred began experimenting with a new method of refining crude oil, a method that would change not only his life, but the industrial rhythm of an entire nation. It was in 1927, when he co-founded the Winkler-Koch Engineering Company, that the first seed of the Koch empire quietly took root. His refining process was so efficient and so disruptive to established oil players that he soon faced lawsuits and threats. Big companies wanted him out of the way. And so, in a decision both courageous and quietly symbolic, Fred turned outward, offering his technology to countries others ignored. He traveled to the Soviet Union, built refineries under extreme conditions, and learned firsthand the complexities of large-scale industrial power. Those early years were tough, filled with travel, political tension, and constant adaptation. But they formed something essential in the Koch mindset. When challenged, expand. When threatened, innovate. When blocked, build elsewhere. When Fred returned to America, this philosophy followed him, guiding him as he grew his ventures and raised his sons, Charles, Frederick, David, and William. each shaped by his disciplined view of work, responsibility, and efficiency. And when Fred passed away in 1967, his son Charles Koch stepped in to lead what would soon become Koch Industries. But Charles didn't merely inherit a company, he inherited a blueprint for a mentality rooted in resilience and reinvention. Gently, steadily, Charles expanded the company far beyond the world of oil refining. He moved with a calm but unyielding vision, acquiring pipelines, chemical plants, paper companies, fertilizer businesses, and manufacturing units. Under his leadership, the company transformed into a vast industrial web that touched energy, agriculture, minerals, building materials, electronics, and logistics. Through each step, everything flowed into everything else. One business supporting another, each acquisition strengthening the whole, like a quiet ecosystem built over decades. As Charles shaped this empire, his brother David Koch joined him, bringing charm, strategy, and a refined understanding of public influence. Together they expanded their reach not by speaking loudly, but by weaving themselves into the fabric of American industry. And with every decision they made, shifting supply chains, refining processes, adjusting manufacturing output, countless lives were affected. Prices of everyday goods moved with their choices. Farmers felt the effects of their fertilizer businesses. Truckers relied on their fuel. Builders used their materials. Families bought products born from Koch-owned companies without ever knowing the name behind them. The influence was immense, yet quiet, and the kind of power that moves through systems rather than headlines. But with such vast reach came moments of conflict and shadow. Over the decades, Koch Industries faced controversies around environmental practices, industrial accidents, price manipulation allegations, and political influence. These weren't loud scandals of individuals. They were systemic tensions born from operating at a scale where even small actions create national waves. Critics spoke of pollution and regulation disputes. Supporters praised their innovation and job creation. Through all of it, the Koch brothers stayed consistent with their father's teachings. Control your operations, protect your freedom to innovate, and stay disciplined in every decision. And discipline became their guiding star. Charles, especially, built the company around a philosophy he called market-based management, a framework that urged employees to think like owners, cut inefficiency wherever they found it, and seek constant improvement. This mindset, woven into every factory floor and every boardroom, is what allowed Koch Industries to grow into one of the world's largest privately held companies in the world. Touching more aspects of daily life than most people ever realize, their influence extended beyond business as well. Through philanthropy, academics, arts, and policy work, the Koch family shaped conversations around economics, freedom, regulation, and innovation. Whether people agreed with them or not, their presence was undeniable, often subtle, often quiet, but always deeply rooted in the structures of society. Their decisions affected fuel prices, industrial material costs, agricultural production, supply chain design, and the employment of tens of thousands. Yet despite all this, the Koch family themselves remained surprisingly understated. No grand displays of wealth, no loud claims of power, just a steady, disciplined belief that efficiency and principle could move mountains. Their empire grew like a river system, branching, deepening, connecting, until it spread through multiple industries, guiding the flow of energy and materials across continents. Let the calm realization settle that behind the fuel in a truck, the materials in a building, the fertilizers in a field, or the products on a store shelf, there are families whose decisions ripple silently across the world. The Koch family is one of them. Architects of an empire built through discipline, resilience, and a deep understanding of how industries breathe. Now, as the quiet industrial might of the Koch family settles into the background, another chapter begins to gently rise. Let's move to the House of Saud, an ancient dynasty whose influence doesn't flow through factories or freight, but through the world's oil pulse itself. A lineage that guides global fuel prices, shapes energy decisions, and holds a quiet sway over economies with every shift in production. Where the Kochs shaped industry, the Saud family shapes momentum, the energy markets, geopolitical tides, and the rhythm of nations that depend on oil to move through each day. A different kind of power, vast and fluid, carried across deserts, oceans, and boardrooms where the world pauses to listen. The House of Saud. In the vast golden quiet of the Arabian desert, long before the world felt the rhythm of oil markets or the pulse of global energy flowing from a single kingdom, a tribal leader named Muhammad bin Saud walked across the sands of St. Diriyah. In the year is 1744, his steps steady, his vision clear. He was not yet building a nation, only guiding a clan, but in that stillness, fate placed beside him a scholar named Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, and their alliance became the soft but seismic beginning of the Saudi story. From this union of leadership and faith, the first seeds of what would one day become the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia were quietly planted. Generations passed and the desert remained patient. There were rises and falls, wars and moments of loss, but something persistent lived in the House of Saud, a belief in unity, order and discipline, even across shifting sands. It wasn't until the early high 20th century, when a young and determined Sir Abdulaziz ibn Saud, known lovingly as Ibn Saud Wail, began reclaiming territories, that the world's attention slowly turned toward the desert kingdom. His way was steady, not rushed. Tribe by tribe, region by region, he rebuilt what earlier generations had lost. And in 1932, after decades of quiet perseverance, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was formed. Yet even then, no one could foresee the magnitude of what lay beneath their feet. Ali in 1938, as drills pressed into the earth near Ra'ads, Damam, the ground offered up a gift that would reshape the world forever. Oil. Thick, dark, shimmering with potential, this discovery didn't simply enrich the kingdom, it rewrote the global economic order. What had once been a desert nation suddenly became the future heart of the world's energy. From this moment onward, the Saudi story merged with the world story. As Saudi Arabia partnered with American oil companies to form Aramco and later took full control in 1980, the House of Saud stepped into a role unlike anything history had seen: stewards of the global energy supply. Quiet meetings in Riyadh could shift fuel prices in distant cities. Decisions taken in private councils could ripple across continents. A change in production, even by a few 100,000 barrels, could lift economies or tighten markets. Power moved beneath the surface, steady, invisible, immense. Under King Faisal, the kingdom modernized rapidly. Roads, schools, hospitals, infrastructure, everything expanded with steady precision. But his leadership also tested the family's strength. In 1973, amid global tension, Faisal made the difficult decision to participate in the oil embargo, reducing supply to nations that supported Israel during the Yom Kippur War. It wasn't a loud act. It was strategic, calculated, and deeply impactful. Overnight, fuel prices soared, lines formed at gas stations, economies shook. And through that single decision, the world understood something unmistakable. The House of Saud held the keys to the world's energy heartbeat. Years flowed onward, and each ruler shaped the kingdom with a distinct, quiet strength. King Fahd, steady and diplomatic, guided the nation through the Gulf War. King Abdullah, gentle yet firm, expanded education and reformed parts of society with patience. And then came Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, with a sweeping vision. Vision 2030 Bennett, aimed at transforming the economy beyond oil. His reforms reshaped industries, opened international partnerships, shifted cultural norms, and reimagined what Saudi Arabia could become decades from now. But influence at this scale never comes without shadows. Over the years, critics pointed to human rights concerns, political tensions, the kingdom's role in regional conflicts, and the opaque nature of its decisions. Every controversy revealed the same truth. When a family holds the reins of energy supply, its actions, whether fair or flawed, ripple across the planet. Fuel prices rise and fall, industries adjust, airlines recalibrate. Families feel the effects at gas stations thousands of miles away. Their influence is not theatrical, it is infrastructural, woven into pipelines, refineries, councils, alliances, and global negotiations. Through all these decades, one thing remained unchanged: the Saudi family's discipline, unity, and long-term strategy. Where other nations changed course with every election cycle, the House of Saud planned in decades, not years. They valued stability, continuity, control, qualities that allowed them to manage the world's largest proven oil reserves with remarkable precision. Their mindset, the core we seek to understand, is built on patience, loyalty, generational thinking, and an unwavering belief in their responsibility as custodians of the kingdom's resources. And so, as the world sleeps each night, global fuel prices still whisper their way through decisions made in Riyadh's quiet rooms. Aramco's strategy synchronizes with global demand. Energy ministers speak softly, yet markets tremble. Pipelines respond, refineries hum, and economies far across the ocean adjust their heartbeat to the pulse set by the House of Saud. Now, as the Saudi chapter settles softly into the night, another story begins to unfold. Let's move to the Rothschild family, an old whispered dynasty whose influence doesn't rise from oil fields or royal halls, but from the quiet architecture of global finance. A lineage woven into the early foundations of modern banking. A network that once guided currencies, funded nations, and shaped the financial heartbeat of Europe with a precision few could see, yet many could feel. Where the House of Saud shaped the world through energy, the Rothschild shaped it through capital, through credit, through trust, through the silent agreements that hold economies together. A different kind of power, subtle and far-reaching, carried through letters, ledgers, and relationships that stretched across continents, long before globalization even had a name. The Rothschilds. There are families whose stories read like history books, and then there are families whose stories feel like the quiet blueprint beneath history itself. And as we drift into this gentle night, we slowly step into the world of the Rothschilds, a lineage that rose not with noise but with precision, with discipline, and with a calm, calculated understanding of how finance shapes civilizations. It all begins in 1744 in the softly lit lanes of Frankfurt's Jewish ghetto, where a goldsmith named Mayer Amschel Rothschild tended a modest shop. He didn't have power then, only clarity, a kind of internal stillness that allowed him to notice what others ignored. That money moved not with chaos but with patterns, and those who understood the patterns could gently steer the world. By the 1760s, Mayer began advising wealthy families and aristocrats, and slowly, almost silently, his reputation grew. No grand announcements, no dramatic expansions, only small steps, each one deliberate, each one aligned with a very particular mindset. Opportunity is found by those who move quietly, steadily, and without fear. When the world outside became restless, Mayer didn't retreat. Instead, during the turbulent Napoleonic era, he saw something others missed. The future would belong to those who could create stability in unstable times. So he made a calm, bold decision, one that would define the family forever. He sent his 5 sons across Europe. Amschel to Frankfurt, Salomon to Vienna, Nathan to London, Karl to Naples, James to Paris. A silent network formed, like threads gently stretching across the continent. And suddenly, Europe wasn't a map of borders. It became a financial web, connected by the discipline, trust, and unity of a single family. This was the beginning of a quiet empire. In 1815, during the tension of the Battle of Waterloo, a moment of remarkable clarity unfolded. Nathan Rothschild, placed in London, understood before almost anyone else that information, fast, accurate, and trustworthy, was more valuable than gold. He built a messenger network so efficient that he knew the outcome of battles before kings did. When news of Napoleon's defeat reached him, Nathan acted with calm precision, positioning the family for one of the most significant financial victories of the century. Not out of manipulation, but out of mastery. Through the 1800s, the Rothschilds financed railways, mines, canals, national banks, and even wars for liberation. They helped shape the modern financial world, brick by brick, bond by bond. They quietly supported the Suez Canal, helped stabilize economies after conflicts, and played pivotal roles in the rise of modern infrastructure. Their influence wasn't loud, it was infrastructural. Like the foundations of a building, unseen but carrying everything on top. Of course, any family that grows this powerful attracts shadows, whispers, scandals, conspiracy theories, accusations of hidden control, some rooted in truth, others in myth. In the late 19th and 20th centuries, the Rothschilds faced anti-Semitic propaganda, political backlash, and the constant pressure of being misrepresented. But even in this, their response remained consistent with their nature. No battles, no noise, just endurance, discipline, and long-term strategy. And while their financial dominance slowly softened over the 20th century, split across generations, trusts, and evolving markets, their symbolic power remained immense. Today, their influence is quieter, scattered through investments, wine estates, philanthropic trusts, and historical institutions. Yet the architecture they built, the structure of global finance, still echoes with their touch. Their story teaches us that success doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And those whispers, steady, strategic, persistent, can shape continents, industries, and generations. And now, as tonight's journey comes to a close, you hold the quiet echoes of 5 dynasties, each shaping the world in their own unseen way. From the Waltons came discipline and everyday influence. From the Mars family, comfort and subtle presence. From the Kochs, the weight of industry. From the House of Saud, the pulse of global energy. And from the Rothschilds, the lasting architecture of finance. 5 families, 5 forms of quiet power, each proving that influence doesn't need noise, only vision, patience, and steady decisions that ripple through the world. If these gentle stories brought you calm and insight, don't forget to subscribe. There are many more silent empires waiting to be explored. For now, let your breath slow, let your thoughts soften, and drift into a peaceful night. Good night, dreamer.